All right, guys, welcome back. Thank y'all for being here. We're doing this one again and again. Anyway, no, we have Clark. We have Clark with Old Dominick whiskey. They are out of Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee. We're going to talk about all the stuff that they're doing. We've already went. I feel like we're family at this point. We've already gone through some stuff together. So, yeah, Clark, how's it going? Are we good to go today?
Hey, we might be. Hey, fingers crossed. Um, but hey, you know what? We got a chance to hang out a third time, so let's do it, man. I love it. I love it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, little inside baseball. We tried to record this a couple of weeks ago, and then tried to record it again. Scheduling conflicts got in the way. Kids were sick. Anyway, we're doing it now. You were gracious enough to send over a couple of bottles of whiskey, and I appreciate you for that. We're gonna get right into it, and I'm not going to fresh crack this one because I, I already fresh cracked it the last time. But what we are going to get into is if I can get in camera, Lord, I don't know how to use a camera. This is the Old Dominick Bonded Tennessee whiskey. So tell us a little bit about this, and then you can tell us about yourself and your brand.
Yeah. So, jumping in just straight to this pour that you're enjoying, and I will be shortly, and those of you out there, hopefully y'all will be as well. But being in Memphis, Tennessee, which is of course where the brand's located, many products we put out we're super proud of, but this particular one, the Bonded Tennessee, it's near and dear to us because being in the state of Tennessee, I mean, you gotta have a good Tennessee whiskey, right?
Absolutely.
It's kind of a prerequisite, if you will, and we really think that this one shines. We started distilling our Tennessee whiskey mash bill, which of course this is a product of, which is a traditional kind of a Kentucky traditional mash bill. It's 75 corn, 13 rye, 12% malted barley. And we
Okay.
started distilling that. That was our first mash bill we started with in early 2017. In fact, really right about this time, 8 years ago, we started that, and we laid down tons of barrels in the early days. Sat on those for the first 5 or 6 years of inception, and we just started to put out our Tennessee whiskey in two formats over the last few years. The first release we did is our everyday drinker. It's our Old Dominick Tennessee whiskey flagship, which is bottled at 85 proof. And of
Okay.
course, this is its near and dear brother, which is our bonded, which is a little bit more, elegant, in my opinion, a little bit more nuanced. But if you get a chance to try our 85 proof, it's pretty readily available. Give that a shot. The bonded, which we're getting into now, totally different, right? I don't have to go through the rules and regulations around bonded whiskey.
No.
I will if you want me to.
No,
But
no, no. I mean, if you want to, that's up to you. But we've talked about that at length. But if you might have something else in there.
well,
Being in the distillation community, you kind of learn these things, but there's always like TTB regulations or whatever that you have to follow that could be a
right.
little different than some of the guidelines. So
Well, I'll tell you this. So, bonded whiskey it's actually essentially it created the first FDA, right? During Prohibition, and people don't know that, but during Prohibition, one of the reasons why Prohibition was enacted is because people were making liquor all over the place, in their bathtub, in the foothills of Appalachia. Didn't matter, right? And while all that was well and good, what happened is people were dying because there was no way to trust the process or the quality of what people were getting. So what the Bottled and Bond Act actually was the precursor for the Food and Drug Administration, which essentially was a stamp of approval by the federal government to say, hey, look, this is bottled and bond, aka this is quality and can be consumed and it won't kill you. Which is probably, back in the day, that's all people needed. Okay, cool. I'm not gonna die from this. Give me the consequences. But fast forward to why that's important these days. As a craft distiller, Old Dominic, we have to, we want to be creating and putting out quality products. Nothing against anybody who doesn't have their own bottled and bond bourbon or whiskey.
mhm.
The fact that we're doing it means it was made by one distiller during one distillation season. It was aged and bottled on premise, aka it was not moved or sourced from anywhere else. And it went to a new vessel, right? So this one in our particular case went to a West Tennessee white oak barrel. All right, and then the kind of the fifth wrinkle, because it's Tennessee whiskey, is it was done in Tennessee, and our process follows the Lincoln County process, which is another kind of regulation and stipulation, but that means it went through charcoal filtration, which was made famous by our friends just east of us, and Jack Daniels and George Dickel, behind that.
Right.
Have it bottled and bond Tennessee whiskey, and you're checking a lot of boxes, and there's about 30-ish distilleries in Tennessee, and there's a lot smaller number of that actually is producing one like we are. And then from a price point standpoint, this pour that we're enjoying is around $50, which is super hard to beat.
Yeah, yes, it is. It really is, because I did have a pour of this the last podcast, and I just enjoyed it because we had a little technical issues. But after sitting with it, and I haven't opened it up again because I wanted to enjoy it with you, of course. And now that I'm coming back to it, it has, I don't know if it was that little bit of neck pour or what, it has really opened up, and it's just really nice. And it doesn't, and I'm not going to poo-poo somebody else's Tennessee whiskey, but doesn't have that minerality to it that some Tennessee whiskeys have. It doesn't have that Flintstone vitamin type thing that all the whiskey guys talk about. It doesn't have that. It's just very not mellowed. It's very mellow. I don't want to say smooth. It's very mellow, but then it has that 100 proof, which kind of counterbalances that. And like you know what you're drinking, you feel what you're drinking. And I feel like obviously the proof point and the age are right where they need to be. And I like that it has that higher corn content because it gives it that inherent sweetness as well.
Yep. And I know, I think we may have talked about it. And if you know anything about Old Dominick's distillation process, some people might know this already, but I think it's important to share. As a craft distillery, we actually go into the barrel at a relatively low entry proof. Okay. And why that's important for a spirit like this is, the big guys sometimes go into the barrel at 120, 130. We go in at 110. All right. And so that is not the most economical way to make whiskey, but it is truly I think the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because when we dump, a batch of barrels for this product we're sipping on, we're doing it 6 barrels at a time, right? That's kind of our batch size. Well, we're blending to taste, but we're not adding a ton of water to dilute that distillate to 100 proof, or even our 85 proof, or one of our other bourbons, which is bottled at 90.1 proof. Mm-hmm. We're not cutting that with a ton of water. So what you're talking about, it was not sweet, but it's still kind of nuanced. It's because it's not very diluted, even right at 100 proof. Of course, our barrel proof and our cask strength stuff, obviously that's a different story. But when you're talking about proofing something down, the fact that we're needing to add as much water is why I think a lot of our whiskeys and bourbons are showcasing a lot more nuance at that proof point, wherever that may be. Now, granted, would it be better to do 120, 125, 130? Heck yeah, we could get a lot more distillate, a lot more output. But doing it the right way is kind of a hallmark of what we kind of try to do at Old Dominick. Yeah.
Right. And also, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, putting it in the barrel at a lower proof, you do eke out, especially in the first little bit, you do eke out a little bit more wood sugar, and it doesn't get as astringent as some of these others who are going in super high. They're getting more of the astringency and the tannins off of it. You're getting more of the wood sugars and the lignins of that. Let's get nerdy on wood, I guess. But, because it does matter, because back in the day, they sometimes would even, pre-prohibition, they would put their whiskey in barrel at 100 proof sometimes. So it was basically just a holding container, and then they realized it made it taste a little better. They were like, oh, this is cool. So, I mean, it's one of those things that you want to get as much as you like you said, you want to financially, it'd be better to put more whiskey, higher proof whiskey in there and just water the piss out of it. That way you don't have 8,000 barrels sitting out there. But flavor wise, I have noticed with other whiskeys as well as this one, the lower entry proof, it really does make a difference because comparatively,
I mean, you can go in super high, but you're still going to get a lot of it. You know, you're not going to get quite as much extraction, and then you're almost going to get that stripping nature out of the barrel char, which is where you're getting all the sugar content, all the esters, all the flavors from anyway. So you just, and that's just our approach to it. And we do have some wrinkles that I'm not going to share with everybody, kind of but some tricks. But, one of the best things about all of our whiskey, and we can jump into the next pour, is it all goes into a West Tennessee white oak barrel, which we think has some extremely different and unique flavors. And then we use a number 4 alligator char across the board of our distillate.
Okay.
So, I mean, coupling those two things together, I think is kind of a little bit of our secret sauce there. Plus, of course, where we're located, our climate is ideal for whiskey aging. You can make whiskey anywhere, but can you actually age it well? That is always the question.
Yeah, that's the issue that we have. I'm located in Texas, and that's the issue that we have here. We have to do slow water reduction and all these or other sorts of things, in barrel proofing, all of that stuff, just to keep the whiskey in the dang barrel, to where it's not over evaporated and over oaked and all of these things. And it's been a struggle for Texas distilleries to figure that out. And some of them to this day still haven't figured it out, obviously. But some have, and they do an amazing job, and they're producing some stellar stuff. And then there's others that need to catch up, I would say. So you told me to open the second one, so I'm opening the second one. This is the cast strength bourbon, 124.62 proof. So this one's a 6-year-old. So this one's going to be a little bit hotter, a little bit older, which is the way I like them, older and hotter.
My man, there you go. Well, it's funny about the bourbon, being in Tennessee, being based in Memphis, like you said, our flagship kind of out of the gate has been our Tennessee whiskey line, right? So we started with the Old Dominick, Tennessee 85 proof, which was kind of our everyday drinker that we kind of went to market with. Shortly thereafter, we followed with our bottled and bond Tennessee whiskey. We were doing batches of that, and then we transitioned to the product we just tasted, which is our everyday bonded SKU. Of course, we had single barrels of Tennessee whiskey behind that. And then we were like, okay, we're ready to go to this next step. And about 1.5 years ago is when we first started to put out what we're enjoying right now. It wasn't in the same format as what you and I are tasting, but we started doing small batches of our high rye bourbon. Which, if you know anything about Old Dominick, we also had a brand, or it still have it, called Huling Station, which a lot of people know. And one of the mash bills, one of the recipes that kind of launched the Huling Station is the same recipe that we're enjoying right now. So it is our high rye bourbon mash, which we're getting very well known for, and it is 44 rye, 52 corn, and 4% or 5% malted barley. All right. Wow. So if you think about the spice content that you're going to pull from this, I mean, the first thing you're going to get on the nose is that pepper, that sweet heat that I like to call it, which is drastic. It's miles away from what we just tasted.
Absolutely.
Right? And what we were finding and what we were getting out of this line is just incredible. So we're drinking this one at full proof, right? It is a 6-barrel blend, the one that we're trying here, but we're not proofing that. We're more so blending to taste, more so for a profile that kind of mirrors our everyday drinker, which is bottled at 90 proof, but just with a little bit more punch. So you're going to get that spice, that heat, but man, it finishes with like caramel, some red hot candy, as a lot of people like that too on the back end. And we've been getting huge results out of this, more so than actually our Tennessee whiskey. So People are more excited about the bourbon that we're putting out than actually, the whiskey itself.
Right.
That's due to the category. Not everybody is super familiar or even looking for that Tennessee whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is comfortable and familiar with the bourbon rules of bourbon and all that kind of thing.
Right. So let's, it's an amazing pour, and I'm getting a lot of your typical bourbon notes that you would get, that vanilla, caramel, all of those things. But it also has, with it being a higher rye content, you're getting some of those spices like a cinnamon or even a nutmeg on there. And it's playing really well with the lower corn content, because the corn just has inherent sweetness. Sometimes people get candy corn or buttered popcorn or something. It's nothing like that. It is just giving it this backbone for that rye to basically take over. If I was doing this in a blind, I might almost think it was a barely legal rye whiskey. You know what I mean? With the amount of punch of rye that's in there, which I love. I love rye whiskeys and all sorts of things. Before we get too much further, why don't you tell us a little bit about your personal background? What got you into whiskey? Basically, what got you into being in the distilling scene?
Right. Yeah. Well, I actually started working in the bars and restaurant, hotel, business, kind of high school and then through college, and so I've always been what I say in the industry. But after college, I kind of got an opportunity to work for a wine and spirits wholesaler, and so we were a distributor of wine, beer, spirits, all the things, right? And I loved that job. It was super fun. It enabled me to meet so many cool people, get exposed to so many different brands, and learn tactics, marketing, sales, just working with people. It was just a great gig. And then one thing that kind of burned me out a little bit on that was I worked for so many different brands. And I had so many different people pulling me in a million different ways, from priority levels of a winery or a brewery, or and then this is early 2010, so the craft beer boom was just everywhere, and it was always trying to chase the new, okay, this is the double milk backflip stout or whatever. I'm like, I can't even, I don't even know this one here. I'm just learning about this cat,
Right.
And I was like, man, I really would love to just focus on like one or two spirits projects and or a brand. And I just got lucky enough to be introduced to the owners of Old Dominick. At the time, the brand itself wasn't really even fleshed out fully. They just had intentions upon revitalizing Old Dominick Distillery. And so the current owners that I work for are actually the fifth generation kind of stewards of Old Dominick itself. So it predates Prohibition. Their great grandfather, Domenico Canale, hence the name Old Dominick, created Old Dominick way back in the day here in Memphis. He had a bunch of different businesses, from the spirits business to wine to produce. He was kind of a jack of all trades, an entrepreneur, an Italian immigrant. And so the true American story, right? However, Prohibition, he saw the writing on the wall, and there's a joke. Tennessee actually enacted federal prohibition 10 years prior to, they enacted it at the state level 10 years before it was enacted nationally. And he died shortly thereafter. So some people kind of say he saw it coming and said,
yeah, I'm done.
I'm done. As legend goes, the distillery doors were shuttered, and, the barrels that we had, no one knows where they went, but people probably have a pretty good idea on where they went. But hey, Memphis was a fun city back then and still is. And I'm sure that whiskey somehow made some people happy. But fast forward to years later, right? And then the family brings back some different companies, one being a produce and the second being a beer. They were a beer wholesaler for Anheuser-Busch. At the time, Augustus Busch came kind of looking close. Hey, we're 4 hours from St. Louis, right? We're 4 hours south of St. Louis. and he needed a place to get his beer to distribute to the masses, because at the time beer wasn't pasteurized. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And so being in the produce space and being a grocer, he had all this refrigerated warehouse, which at the time was pretty cutting edge. I mean, you don't think about that now. I mean, you walk to your fridge and grab a beer, but at the time you couldn't do that. You had to transport, had to keep it cold. So they were a great fit to be an Anheuser-Busch wholesaler. So that was a massive windfall for that company. They ran that until about 2009. 2012, they kind of started selling off these businesses. And then the current generation looked up and said, hey, we want to kind of bring back the family legacy, get back into distribution, get back to taking care of customers, really making a name for himself. So hence the revitalization of Old Dominick. And so 9 years later, here we sit, and I've been fortunate to be with the company since then. And we put a lot of sweat equity, some tears, some blood
I'm sure
to it. But that's kind of my story, how I got into this business. But we're a small but mighty team at Old Dominick, and everybody wears a lot of hats. So, but it's a great brand to work with, and one thing we love to do is just get out and engage with people like you, your consumers. That's our favorite part of the business. Making friends is what we say.
Absolutely.
Which, if you have spirits, you tend to make a lot of friends. So that comes natural in space. So
absolutely. And it's also really cool that they wanted to revitalize the brand, because we hear about all the times through the history books that these brands just go and then they're never, and then some, non-distilling producer will come in and take that brand name of some 150-year-old brand and slap some MGP on it and say, hey, this is blah, blah, blah from, it's got a 200-year-old recipe. Yes, it does originally, but not what you're doing. So it's really cool that you guys are trying to be very traditional with what you're doing, sticking to your roots, doing all of the things that need to be done. How many people work in the distilling part of the distillery? Just so I can kind of get a makeshift size of what we're working with.
We have a strong team. It ranges from like 10 to 15, depending on seasonality. And then, when we're really churning and burning, we fold in some of our hospitality team. So we have a phenomenal bar, tasting and tour element to Old Dominick, as well as an event space. So we're strong. I mean, we can really put whiskey away, bottle it, get it out the door. So you kind of couple the full-time production guys and gals plus our front of house staff. I mean, we can do it with anybody else in the country. Kind of in our tier of the craft distiller, which is great. And that's cool too, because everybody has input for the most part. Not only on new products, but taste profile. Hey, this is a fun idea, or hey, this is a crazy idea. Somebody tell me it's not going to work, and we're all looking around like, hey, it might work. Let's give it a try. But that's cool too. I mean, you really do have a group, a family environment there, which I don't think a lot of distilleries, or certainly non-producing distilleries, have that element, because we have the kind of the fail-safe of our own distillate, and it's everyone's baby, right? So we can take risks at times, but we also want to make sure we preserve the general brand and the long-term success of it as well.
Right. Absolutely. Because if you, like I always say, stay in your lane, but veer over in the other lane once in a while, just to see how the water is.
Yeah, it doesn't come off as credible, or you're going to chase a fad. I mean, traditionally we have stayed close to kind of industry standards and trying to make sure that we hit all the quality marks. Not to say that we can't and won't do some fun trends and try to do some things that are current. But, at the end of the day, if you make good whiskey for a good price point and you have good people behind it, like, it should be able to sustain.
Absolutely. I mean, if you make a good product, you have a good story that's behind it, good people trying to sell it and make it. And I mean, you really have everything you need. And like you said, a good price point, because there's some of these craft whiskeys out there that are saying we're craft, so we're going to be way up here, up top where nobody can attain those. You're paying $150, $200 for a bottle of whiskey, and it's like, man, I'd like to try your product, but man, it's a little steep. So I totally get that, but I also understand the other side of that, where you are a smaller, quote unquote, smaller distillery, so therefore the profit margin or the amount going in is a lot more and less, because you can't fill as many barrels, you can't, your warehousing is smaller and stuff like that. So it's like, these are some of the growing pains that obviously you guys have seen throughout the years. Can you kind of dive into those a little bit? Like, have you had to do any expansions on Rickhouse, or had to get a bigger still or anything like that just to meet up with the demand that's coming in?
All of the above. I mean, there's those are the kind of, occasionally, well, it depends on how far away we are from some of those hiccups. Then you can laugh, but in the moment you're like, you're losing sleep over that kind of thing. And not just me, everybody on the team. Like I mentioned, everybody has a hand and everybody has an input in a lot of these decisions. I'll give you an example. We as recently we built I won't give you the number of the warehouse, but we built an additional warehouse, right? And so, we fill up our main distilling warehouse, our aging loft, quickly. I mean, we could fill it up in a matter of a few months because of our output. So we have to have external places where we can age. But one of our main kind of focuses is making sure that we remain tethered to the distillery. It'd be easy to build something, 100 miles away in the middle of nowhere because land's cheap and, whatever. But we're an urban distillery. We're at the heart of our downtown. So we had to build another offsite warehouse, which is about a half mile away from the distillery. So close that we could literally make a pallet of barrels, throw it on a truck and drive it over if we needed to. But we're filling this thing up pretty good, right? And then we kind of realized, well, shoot, it's 30 degrees in here during the winter, which is phenomenal. And in the summer, it's like 65. And if you go over to our main warehouse, which is not climate controlled, it's 30 degrees in the winter and it's 100 billion degrees in the summer. So that whiskey is going like boom, boom, right? Those barrels. Yeah. So just one of those like learning curves. We're like, well, shit, I think we might need to do something here. So as of pretty recently, we're figuring out, should we pull out the insulation? Should we just cut holes in the side of the rick house? There's all these different ways you could skin the cat. But it came to be that we put some louvers in. So basically some windows we can drag and close to create a draft. And, I'm not even kidding. A month ago, we went in there and we were doing some barrel inventory in the first week of January. And it was so freezing cold. I mean, it was literally just like bone chilling. And then, I assume now in a month or two, when the temperature comes back up, it's going to be as hot outside as it will be in that room. And so those are the funny things you just don't really think about, but then you kind of come to know. So, not that project wasn't expensive at all, but it was a fun and easier fix than, another way of doing it. And those are the things you just kind of figure out as a team, make a decision, chart a course and go, which is really fun to kind of see, come to. But the other thing that is just always a push and pull was like during COVID, we were launching a couple products and trying to get things to market. And we're just running out of glass. We're running out of cardboard boxes. We're running out of corks. And so that's another funny thing where people are like, we're like all just trying to find finished raw materials anywhere we could find it. Somebody one day would be Googling, where can I get a rubber cork? Where can I get bottles? Where can I get this? So you piecemeal it together and we survived and we made it through and we had 4 different types of bottles and, nobody really cared. But we, one of those fun things you just kind of look back now and you're like, wow, that was comical. But in the moment you're like, oh my God, like we're not going to make it through this type of thing.
Well, and that's the cool thing. I mean, it's not cool, but that's the thing with the whole COVID thing was everybody felt the brunt of it. Everyone felt it. Right. So it's not like oh, we're going to be hurt. Everybody was hurt. So it's like everybody was having glass problems and cork problems and box problems. There's a jam and jelly place here in town that's pretty world famous, and they had the same issue. They couldn't get jars for their jams, and they're like, this is our signature bottle. Like this is the bottle we use. It'd be like Blanton's not using their little horsey bottle. It's like you have to use that bottle. And so they ended up having to use. I think they even got some plastic bottles for a while. Anyway, so it's one of those things.
It's better than not putting your product out.
Absolutely, and then you get through that, and then the next time that they have glass for sale, you buy more than you need because you never know when you're going to get it again. So yeah, and then you have a big inventory, and then you sit on inventory forever, and it's a vicious cycle of going through all that. So let's talk about the bottle a little bit. This is actually a really cool bottle. I don't normally talk about, but we were talking about it. It has some little divots and stuff in it. I feel like it's really good. A really good shelf bottle because like it's round enough, but it's not like a wine bottle. It's not like, it's just a really nice, and it feels good in the hand, which some of those bottles you get, they're either too clunky at the bottom or they just don't feel right. And this one's just enough to fit in the hand.
If you can show the bottle and show the bottom of the rivets kind of down there.
Yeah.
So, we transitioned everything into that custom glass. So, in addition to the whiskey line, we also make a vodka and a gin, and a bunch of other fun products. But everything is that same custom glass. It's something that our creative designer and marketing director, Richie Weaver, actually created from scratch, which is super cool. And the bottom of that is almost like the old school whiskey chalice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like a chalice you would get with like the classic elements to it. And he kind of found inspiration to do that from some old bottles that Old Dominick actually had back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Kind of with a new twist on it. And, because of that, we've got tons of awards from the packaging and design, but that's another thing back to the team, small but mighty. I mean, he literally came up with that, soup to nuts, sourced it, created it, had the vision and went to work and got it done. So it's pretty cool. We didn't go to like some, manufacturer or some marketing firm or whatever to create that. That was an in-house deal, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is.
And people comment on that all the time, especially with our price points being where they are. That's kind of has this classic, elegant, premium look to it. But, when you can walk out the door for this one we're drinking for, $50, it's hard to beat.
And it's almost like, and I don't do this. I'm not I'm crafty, but I'm not that crafty. It's almost like when you were done with the bottle, you could cut it right there and make a good rocks glass out of it or something like.
Well, it's funny. There's people who make candles out of the bottom of that a lot. And we have a glass that you can buy at our retail shop that's almost like the same as the bottom. So we've heard that a lot. I would not recommend on your own if you don't know how to deal with that to try to do that. But so that's just a warning. I don't want to get sued or anything. But
yeah, exactly.
Don't try this at home. Type of deal.
Don't cut it. So let's talk about some of your other products, if you don't mind. You said you had a gin and a vodka. Have you done any rye whiskey or single malts or anything like that?
We have not done a rye whiskey. For a small producer like us, rye is a very finicky grain to work with. Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the worst, frankly. But that does not mean we do not have intentions and plans very shortly to make a rye. People know us for our high rye bourbon. We got to have a rye whiskey. Plans are in place to probably do that soon. But American single malt is something we're jumping with both feet in immediately.
Please do.
Our lead distiller, David Valentine, is a stud, and he's a savant when it comes to that. He started talking about the different, takes on it and what he wants to do. And I was like, I was blown away. I was like, sounds good. I have no idea what you're talking about, but let's go. And so we are working on a lot of those projects. Problem being is, we got to wait a little while on it. But with the changes in regulation from the TTB and federal, level, the American single malt category is a lot more broad than maybe it used to be.
Right.
So that's kind of the next kind of frontier, if you will, of like creativity from any American distillery, in my opinion. So we're going to be right on the cusp of that. But with that comes like expansion from granaries, and we need we might not need a malting facility, but we got to make sure that we're aligned with the profiles and the different yeast strain, all that kind of stuff. So takes a while, but that is something you're definitely going to want to look out for in a few years from Old Dominick. But beyond the whiskey and the aged spirits, we have a phenomenal gin, which we call our Southern style gin. We came up with that probably in 2019. We actually used our tasting room as kind of a test, an incubator, if you will. We had, I don't know, I think maybe 20 different formulas, and we tried out people who came to the bar. We tried out some different markets and bartenders, and we settled on our formula number 10, which is our Southern style gin, which it's beautiful. It's sweet. It's floral. It is not your juniper bomb, your Christmas tree. It's not that. If you're looking for that, it's probably not gonna be one you're gonna like. But if you're trying to get it into the gin category, this is your go-to. And it's a beautiful bottle. Actually, I got one right here. I don't know if y'all can see. Yeah. So you see that label right there? Okay. On the label, this is another kind of a Easter egg that our creative designer, Richie Weaver, came up with, is all the different botanicals incorporated into the label.
That's really cool.
Which is really neat. And that's a fun one we make. We also have a vodka that was actually the first product we put out. You have to put something out.
Right, you do.
Great. We love that one. And then we also have our Honey Bell citrus vodka, which is kind of a fun play on an orange vodka. But ours is tangerine, grapefruit, a little bit of lemon. It kind of tastes like one of those cuties you ever see. Man, it's like you close your eyes, you taste that. So that's a good one. So look for those kind of around town. But we hang our hats nowadays on the whiskey for sure.
As you should, because the two bottles that I've got are really singing to me. They're doing a lot, and I would say you guys are the first Tennessee-based distillery that I've had on. I've had some people that have had Tennessee whiskey in their repertoire, but they were sourcing Tennessee or something like that. You guys are the first ones,
right?
And I'm super excited about it because like I always, and this just might be my ignorance, and excuse me for that, I always thought of Tennessee whiskey as the Jack and the Dickel. That's what it. And so that flavor profile that I had of banana runts and Flintstone vitamins, going together, I'm like, well, it is what it is. But after tasting, especially your bonded, which was the Tennessee, is your bourbon's not charcoal mellowed, correct?
No, just the Tennessee whiskey.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if all of your stuff was done that or just the Tennessee whiskey.
Yeah, and it's funny you should mention that. Is our take on the charcoal mellowing is quite literally a box check. All right, so if you get a chance to visit, and some people who are going to listen to this have, our chamber is that big, so it runs through charcoal filtration, quote unquote, for just a couple trickles. We can check that box, still call it Tennessee whiskey. But because we put it in a number 4 char, burnt to shit barrel, alligator char, why put it through miles and miles of charcoal filtration and strip all that flavor out to then put it in a barrel, right? So we kind of feel like we're taking a different play on that, not to throw shade at anyone else, but being that we're in Memphis and we're the most western corner of Tennessee, we do things different anyway down here. And that's just kind of what we like to say. Ours has a little bit more punch, a little bit more flavor. It's got a little bit more swag, I think, because we're in Memphis versus some other places, and some people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's a little harsh." And we're like, "Well, it's got more flavor to it."
Absolutely.
And your sweet Flintstone vitamin tasting, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like George Dickel. That's my my go-tos. But you know what I mean? It's just different, right? It's just a little different.
Yeah. No, it really is. I mean, and the fact that you guys are doing the minimum, which to me, I'm like, yes, if I was in Tennessee and I wanted to make a Tennessee whiskey, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be the compliance Tennessee whiskey. It's not going to be one of these overdrawn out, because I always thought about that as well. Like, you're charcoal filtering the whiskey, and then you're putting it in the most charred barrel you can get, which is charcoal on the inside, basically, and you're going to let it sit there for 5 or 6 years. It's like, aren't you charcoal mellowing it? I mean, because if you've ever tried
charcoal mellowing, I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you try new make coming off the still, and then you try a 6-year-old bourbon that's been sitting in a barrel, they're drastically different, and one is sharper than the other, definitely 100%. So it's going to get some mellowing. So I don't know. I just think it was kind of a thing, and they started a thing, and now it's if it's a biblical term almost at this point, where
it's no different than the limestone water in Kentucky, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not the harp. I mean, you can taste the difference. It's well known, but does that, you know what I mean? If you're gonna run your limestone water through reverse osmosis, which essentially takes every single element out of the water to then dilute or use for distillation, there's no flavor profile to it. Now there's a lot to be said. I'm not knocking that. In fact, in Memphis, we have quite literally the best water table you can find, and it's important that we use that in our processes. But at the end of the day, I mean, with the technology you have nowadays, like, it's not quite as important as it probably once was.
No.
To the process. Yeah.
No, I mean, because you think about pre-prohibition or right after prohibition, when everybody's coming back hard and fast and trying to get their brand back up, that limestone water was literally pulled out of the river. They might have ran it through a sieve or something like that and put it in the bottle. And the charcoal mellowing was to literally, because they were just having to run hot and fast distillation, and their cut points maybe weren't exactly where they needed to be. So they ran it through a filter to get some of the nasties out of it. So it's just that they're doing those practices still is cool. But like you're saying,
cool.
like the reverse osmosis, me being a plumber, for my business, it literally strips everything out of the water. I mean, so much to where it attacks metal. That's why you have to have, plastic piping. Plastic piping for it, because if not, it will literally eat it. You can't put it in your metal jug or something like that. It'll eat through it. So yeah, like, this is the technology that we have, like you were saying. But I mean, it's so cool that, like, doing the traditional, but they have limestone water in Texas. They have limestone water in Indiana, so like it's not just that. But yes, I get the traditional background of it, and it's super cool. Like, yeah, if they said, "Oh no, we use Brita water filtered water," it's like, no, that's not cool.
Right.
But anyway, no, it's super funny. It's super cool. But yeah, okay, let's move on to the elephant in the room, which is none other than the original Toddy. See, my camera's cut in half because you're on the screen, so I'm having to go way over here. So
I can see it very fine. I don't know if
I know. It's everybody at home. So this is a bourbon whiskey infused with natural flavors. So this has been sitting in the shed. Should I shake it up a little bit?
Give it a little shake.
Okay.
But
because it does have it is a little cloudy if so. So tell us about this one and the thought behind it, because I'm intrigued with this one, and you told me to do this one last because it's pretty flavorful. That's what I heard.
Yeah, and of all the things we make, and I'm going to sound like, I'm flip-flopping here, but, I noticed that we hang the hat on the whiskey, and our gin is great, and our vodka is top-notch, which they all are. I'm a sales guy. I'm not going to knock.
I'm sure.
This is my favorite product we make, and will always be that, because it has just the best story, and then the profile and the flavor is just something that I'll hard press anybody to find something like it anywhere in the business. So the story, let's start there. I mentioned that the family that we work for, the brand predates Prohibition. Well, one of the most important products in the brand and the family's history was this Old Dominick toddy that you're trying. Okay. So I think I told you, but he was a grocer, he had a grocery business prior to even jumping into the wine and whiskey importing. But what happened was he had, he'd bring new make whiskey down from Cairo, Illinois, or from, Kentucky, or from wherever he could find it, right? Well, it wasn't quite that good, frankly, so he's bringing it in on rail cars and, by boat if he had to. And he was like, well, I got to flavor this whiskey because it's just not good. So perfect example, a guy that just utilizing what he had fruit, he had herbs, he had spices, he had all these kind of things. And I don't know how, it's hard to even tell how he came to this recipe. But the fact is he did come to a recipe and he would bottle it. It's called the Old Dominick toddy. And there's a label, you can look it up. It's pretty wide. The story is pretty well known now, but the Old Dominick toddy was a pretty widely known brand back in the day. It was widely distributed. In fact, even in Memphis, where we're located, the Commercial Appeal, which is our local newspaper, even back then, he had big ads in it that Old Dominick toddy, prescribed to cure all ailments, or doctor recommended. So this concept of the toddy being kind of medicinal, but also having this delicious whiskey taste to it,
right,
just took off, and it became a thing and became a phenomenon. And if you look at the original bottle, which was kind of part of the relaunching of this brand, it has two roosters fighting over a shot glass. And so if you let me look at my screen here, and if you look at the bottles, what do you see?
A rooster.
A rooster. Okay. And with his talons on a shot glass, right? So not only does the product, the toddy, mean significant amount to the brand itself, but the product is still the exact same as it was back in the day, as it is today. So the owners that I work for actually found one of the original bottles, and were able to send it off, get it analyzed, and recreate the formula that was being made back then today. Once again, with modern technology, you can do it. Now, is it the exact same profile? It's hard to tell, but it's pretty damn close. So it's our high rye bourbon as the base, and then we infuse it with cinnamon, clove, black pepper, sugar, citrus peel, and the way we make it is basically you take a barrel of whiskey and you put all those different ingredients in almost like a cheesecloth, or kind of like if you're making tea, like a tea bag, if you can envision that, and you steep it in there just for a little bit, blast it with hot water. All those lovely things just kind of filter into the barrel, and then we dump and strain, and it goes right into the bottle. So you're pointing about, hey, it's a little cloudy. What's the deal? Well, that's because it's all natural ingredients, quite literally strained and put right into the barrel or bottle of whiskey and sent out the door. So if you notice on the back, it says kind of shake well. There's not it has a shelf life to it or anything. It's not bad, but it is truly made by hand with an all natural process. So you're going to get a little bit of that, little floaters in there. Like I said, sometimes we don't love to see it. It's not the best visual thing, but when you shake it up and you pour it over either ice or just drink it neat, I mean, it's just such a good product. So what do you profile of it?
Okay. You ready? I'm gonna take you on a journey. So like on the nose, it is like, to me, it's citrus forward, but it's like a cinnamon. We just came off the holidays, and everybody's, has their, we are in a German town, so we drink wassail or, stuff like that, where it's like a mulled wine and stuff like that. It's similar to that, but a little bit more citrus in it. And it's very I like to drink a hot toddy every once in a while, put a little honey and cinnamon and whatever in my whiskey and just sit back and relax and enjoy that. So it's very reminiscent to that, but the spices that are there are so nice and they're so cohesive. And then on the sip, if you'll excuse me. It gives you like a, oh man, I'm going to say bouquet because I'm bougie, but it gives you a bouquet of like different spices, almost like cardamom or something like that, where it's like not your normal baking spices that you would use, something a little bit different. But then there's a little bit of sweetness from the sugar, obviously. There's a little bit of sweetness there, but then there's that whiskey. That whiskey just kind of carries it all the way through. And then you get a little bit of that rye spice, just a faint little bit at the end. And then it finishes super clean. And it makes you want to go back for another drink. And it's sitting at what, 60 proof?
60 proof, right?
So, yeah, 60 proof. So it's something that you could have a couple of drinks of and not feel guilty about, and being that it's shelf stable and all of those things, it's really one of those things where like I could feel like if you weren't feeling well, or even if you were feeling well and you were just feeling a little festive, this would be the great pour. Now, this might even be a pour that you have like when you're at the deer camp, which I don't go to deer camp, but if you were to go to deer camp, have a couple of this.
You're sitting in a duck blind, or where you're in Texas, we're in Tennessee. I mean, you're going to you're tailgating for a football game. Oh, yep. This is in the pocket right here. This is where you go. It's perfect for just those kind of experiences. And this one, we always say, this is one that's made to be shared. This is one of those where you're sitting around a campfire, or you're doing something communal because it's, there's a story behind it. It is quite very unlike any other. And it's a fun one, man. It's good. Like I said, I travel through all over the country, and I've experienced the biggest bourbon nerds, or the sommeliers of the world, and they're like, oh, excuse me, I don't try that. And then they taste it and they're like, oh, okay, I can do it. I can get behind that, So it's not everybody's everyday drink, but it's just something super fun to try and unique.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I will tell you, when I received it, I was like, oh, I need to get into that right now. I want that right now, because it sounds like refreshing, but it's okay. We all know that when you drink whiskey or anything, it takes you back to that memory. And This takes me back to a memory. I don't know if it's an actual memory, but it's a memory that maybe I want of you sitting. It's like Thanksgiving, and you're sitting around the table, and you've eaten dinner, and everybody's having a drink, and everybody's laughing. Uncle's over there drunk. He's yelling at everybody, drunk uncle over there. And, and we're just having a good time, and you're having one of these. Like, to me, that is the pinnacle of a good time. And is this an everyday drinker? Absolutely not. It's not one of those things you're going to pick up and, everyday drink, and you're not going to, I nosed it and drank on it, but you're not going to like critique it. I wouldn't give it a review or something like that. This is just good stuff to drink. And I mean, I hate to say it like that, but it's just good to drink, and it makes you feel something. It makes you feel warm on the inside, and so that to me is super cool. If you can trigger a memory, it's well worth it to me, because it's just one of those things where it makes the spirit. It doesn't matter what it is. It makes it that much better if you can trigger that. It's especially if it's a happy memory. Now, if it said, this reminds me of when my dog died. No, I don't want to relive that one. But
Old Smoky. No, but I will say that we hear people say, I did not come up with this, so I can't claim it. But over the years, I've heard people say, well, this is a holiday in a bottle. And that's kind of what you're saying, right? People immediately, well, it brings back whatever that is. So that's fun. And as I said, we sell, the majority of this product, I'd say 90% of it, from like, fall to this time of year, right? Where it's cold outside, right? That doesn't mean people don't love it in the middle of the summer.
For sure.
Drinking it with like lemonade or ginger beer, but the sweet spot is when it's cold and chilly and warms you up inside. So it's a fun one. Absolutely. But as I told you can't drink it first because your palate is
palate's totally toast. Like, I have nothing but like spicy spiciness in there, and then that citrusy. It's almost like, you ever had like a flat Sprite? You know, it almost has
exactly
it's kind of effervescent, but it's really not. Like if you shook it up or something, it might be effervescent. That's kind of what I'm getting on
a lot of people say
aftertaste.
Fireball, and there's nothing wrong with that comparison, but that's just the cinnamon notes. It's so much more nuanced.
It's so much more.
And
it's so much more.
So, but yeah,
it really is. I appreciate you sending that over, because that is different and unique and super cool. And I am the nerd of nerds that's going to enjoy that. And I'm going to sample it out to some people for them to have it as well, because I think it'd be really cool for, you know, a whiskey aficionado to have this like in a blind or something.
Right.
Just have them be like, what is this? And then you let them know. They're like, man, that's really good. You know, so it's a lot of fun. And that's one of the things about the whiskey community, and I know you guys are pressing this as well. It's just get out there and try stuff. You know, you might, that's why you guys have a gin and a vodka and all the other things, because not everybody's into whiskey, right? Not everybody's into drinking whiskeys neat out of a Glencairn and doing all the things. Some people want to have a cocktail. I bet this would go great in a cocktail. You know, like you said, with a ginger beer or something. I bet that's fantastic. But even
have a heyday with this one, because it can be the base star of the show of a cocktail, or it can be more of like a supporting element in the drink that might be a gin or even a bourbon, because it's so kind of funky. But you're right. You know, not everybody is like us. Like if it's me and you, I'm sitting around, I'm pouring neat and I'm drinking it. But I think we're a smaller piece of the pie. I think more people lean towards what we're enjoying right here with this toddy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that leads me into my next question, which I didn't have any questions prepared, because I knew that we were just going to riff off of each other, and this has been a great time. And I'm not trying to tell you to get out of here, kick you out of the room, but what is a go-to whiskey that's not y'all guys' distillate that you go to when you just want a good pour, or maybe a special occasion pour? Like I ask people that as well. Not only a go-to, because everybody picks Wild Turkey 101, right? Not only a go-to, but maybe a special pour that you want to have, or that you would like to have, maybe. Tell me about that.
Well, that's a good question. You know, I kind of waffle back and forth, but probably my favorite producer of whiskey, you know, the brand that I think does it best, from everyday marks to things you can barely find, would be Old Forester. I just love everything from Old Forester. There's not a bad bottle I've ever had, and I've been on a lot of these talks, and everybody asks that question, and I'm not straying from that. I feel like that's a cop out, because it's just, you know, it's just so good. But another brand that I love, kind of more in the craft space, is Chattanooga whiskey. So
Chattanooga.
There isn't anything they've put out that has not been just awesome. Now, I will say there's some funky, wild stuff they put out that I wouldn't buy a second bottle of.
Right.
That is a distillery that I just really think is awesome, because similar to us, I mean, they have the same growing pains, but I would challenge people to find something that they put out and put their name behind that wasn't quality. It might not be your cup of tea all the time, but they put out some really, really great stuff. So I would say that is one I really enjoy all the time too.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I picked up recently a bottle of Chattanooga that was the Triple Peat. Yeah. And it was like, I don't even know. It was in a peated cask. They peat smoked the cask before anyway. It was, you know, like all the things that they did to it. And you're just like, good Lord, the description on the bottle is like,
right. You know,
some of it's like a paragraph of crap that they did.
Y'all gonna need a bigger bottle. I can't even read all the stuff.
Yeah.
On here.
I would hate to be the person that has to turn that into the TTB and be like, this is what we're trying to make. It's like a freaking portfolio of stuff they're handed in there. It's really crazy.
I can assure you, and I know some of those people over there, they got some friends at the TTB, because the things that they get approved are don't know how, but
that is a distilled spirit specialty. I don't care what you say. That has to be a distilled spirit specialty. I mean, good Lord, you can't put that much crap in a bottle and expect it to be a whiskey still. but yeah, no, I mean, it's so cool because like, even if you have a brand and a brand that you rep or whatever, it's cool to say, hey, I really like this brand too, because it's all about the camaraderie. And then Chattanooga, they're out of Tennessee as well. So, you know, it's like you want to have camaraderie with all your fellow whiskey makers out there. It's like in the Texas whiskey scene, we're all fighting for it, which I say we, the proverbial we, not me so much, but we're all fighting for each other. You know, we're lifting each other up, you know, and saying, hey, this guy's doing cool stuff. Go check them out type stuff. And that's what it's all about, because in the craft scene, which I promote the craft scene, obviously, you know, Buffalo Trace isn't going to get on this podcast anytime soon. I've asked and they said no. So just to let you know, but I would just say like us uplifting each other and saying, hey, these guys are doing cool stuff. And that's why I like to have people like yourself and your brand on here, because there might be somebody out there that doesn't know your brand, or somebody from your brand, or somebody that knows your brand very well that doesn't know me. And it turns into a cross collaboration of like, and I don't know if you knew that when you were getting on this. Now you're part of the family, so like, you know, I'll see you at Christmas, but type thing. But
right, enjoying a time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this cross collaboration where we're lifting each other up, and like, you know, like when you guys do a post on Instagram, I'll repost it or something, you know, and that's what it's all about, is getting the brands out there so other people can see them. Because if one person watches or listens to this podcast and they're like, hey, I need to go check them out, you know, that I did my job. I would love 10, 20, 50, 100 people to go and do the same thing. But, you know, you can't appease everybody, because, you know, that's just some people don't like that one episode that you did. You know, I did one stupid episode a long time ago. You know, it's kind of like back in college. I did one thing back in college.
No, I never yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I will tell you this too, man. I appreciate you know, taking an interest in promoting brands like us, but I will tell you know, now is more important than ever, because as this industry becomes more squeezed from the large companies and the big boys out there, which is kind of this, you know, us against the world mentality. Anybody in the Old Dominick kind of comp set, comparable set, I mean, everyone is hurting from that squeeze, because they have more backing, they got more marketing, they got more people, they got more pull with the distributors, they got more pull with national chain retail and all that. So if you can take anything from this, if it's Old Dominick, cool. But if it's another brand that's local to your area, go buy that shit.
Yeah,
because that's who needs, you know, that's who needs support in this kind of time and space, because it's hard. It's a hard business to be in.
It really is. And I don't want to get political, and I don't want to talk about that part at all, but there's also some tariffs that are coming up, which is going to put a squeeze on not only export, but, you know, you being able to export to other places as well. And I don't know if y'all have international distribution yet, but it would take a squeeze to that and make it to where you're not as able to do that. So I don't know. So let's talk about that.
Supply chain is going to be so. Thankfully, most of our raw materials, of course, our, you know, grain and everything is domestic, but I would say 90% of our finished goods and raw materials to get there is stateside, which is something we've always tried to do. It might not be the cheapest, but it is important to us to do it that way. That cannot be said for everyone else. It's way cheaper to get bottles from France or from China, packaging from you name it. And so Brown-Forman, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, they are going to probably be forced to look domestically. So they're going to gobble up all of those raw materials. So that's going to put an even deeper squeeze on craft distilleries, because guess what? Brown-Forman can buy more in 1 week than Chattanooga whiskey and Old Dominick could buy an entire year. So boom,
absolutely,
prices are squeezed. So it's a trickle down effect. You know, I'm not going to sit here and just, you know, cry over spilled
Right.
milk.
Oh no.
It is what it is. But back to that point, you know, people doing it the right way, try to find those guys, whether it be your local guy or a regional guy, whatever it may be, and try to buy something they're putting out, because I guarantee you they put a lot more effort into it than, you know, like I said, I'm not knocking, and I already said Old Forester's my go-to, but I'm not, I mean, Brown-Forman, you know, they got 100 people that are doing procurement, you know, any given day, you know, so it's just a different game.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about distribution real fast. How is y'all's distribution? Are you Tennessee only? Do you have some? I mean, one of the only good things, and I will say this, one of the only good things to come from COVID was the fact that online retail with whiskey and stuff like that, it kind of had a boom during that, because everybody was sitting at the house and they had expendable income and they just bought whiskey. Besides me, I was out, you know, fixing stuff. But anyway, that's beside the point. But how is y'all's distribution, not only in the state but countrywide?
Yeah, so we were in. It changes, you know, year to year. We've been in many, you know, we've been in New York and California and Florida, and we've spread our wings, no pun intended, to lots of states over the course of the history of OD. But we've also kind of shrunk the playing field as a response to COVID. So we're basically in, like I always tell people, we're in the SEC and the Big Ten. All right. If you can figure out, now the SEC is adding a lot of teams and the Big Ten's adding a lot of teams. So that might not hold weight anymore.
Right.
But we're kind of regionally located with distribution in the Southeast and the Midwest. But to your point, now we can reach pretty much anywhere with our online retail space. So wherever you're listening or consuming this content from, chances are we can get to you. So if we're not in your local market, please just, you know, hit our website or follow us on social, and you can buy direct almost everything we carry. But we're adding states and stuff like that as we kind of grow within our, you know, means. And we kind of have the approach of, you know, if we can't get out there and meet people and engage with customers and consumers, we don't really want to be there, because that's kind of why we got into the business. So we don't want to be in states and markets that we can't, like, feel that we have some sort of presence or connection to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we're not in your state, sorry, you're just far away. We'll get you eventually. We'll get there eventually. But, you know, we're doing what we can. And, you know, some of that is inventory constraints with our aged whiskey now coming online in a bigger capacity. Now we can probably put out more whiskey than we could have maybe 2 years ago. Or we're waiting to have more of a excess volume to sell too. Right.
So my biggest concern is, are you in Texas?
We are in Texas.
Okay, that's all I care about.
In Texas. There you go. And ask for us at Specs and Twin and Goody and you know, Pinkies and all that. We're getting more into those chains, but what we really do well in the independent retailers, like a Liquor King, or like guys like that, Longhorn.
Yeah.
Those are the spots that, you know, actually, well, I don't want to dog anybody in that chain model, but, you know, the guys that like here at Liquor King, like he comes down to the distillery and like picks out his own barrel and knows me and Chris and all the guys. Like those people, you walk into that store, they're going to be able to tell you about the brand. Whereas some of the larger players, which of course we need, you know, they're more commodity driven. So look for us in your independent store. And if we're not there, just ask them to bring it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something I try to do every time I go to, like, even Specs, which I know Specs is a pretty big brand and stuff like that, but like and here's the other thing that I've talked about ad nauseum is fighting for shelf space, right? Because there's so much whiskey on the market. It is an oversaturated market right now with whiskey, because guess what? Jack Daniels have 17 different SKUs now, and all these guys have all these SKUs. And guess what? They're going to put that new Bullet lineup, that new Bullet single malt out before they're going to put some craft stuff up. I'm sorry, they are, because guess what? They have more marketing money to push towards them, and that's just how it goes. So look for it. in your store and ask for it. And the more people that ask for it, they're going to be like, man, we probably need to get some of that, because I've had 5 people today ask for it. And that's what gets these craft brands into the bigger stores. And, because a lot, and I've talked to other distilleries as well that say, yeah, Specs wanted to take us on, but they wanted 4.5 pallets to start with. And I'm like, we don't make that much. So I don't, hold on. You're going to, that's all of my stock. So I won't have anything else to sell. So that's also the other thing is like, just like you're saying, you're trying to meet up with demand. And I guess you guys are blowing and going on distillation, correct?
Oh yeah. We have, we're working through, I'd love to see it. Of course, I don't know anything about. I'm like a fish out of water when I go on the production floor. I'm like a cheerleader. Hey, you guys got it. But I can tell you that like over the last few years, I mean, we're streamlining our processes. We're pumping out volume and we're super efficient. And I feel like we got a super talented team. So I would also say, hey, come see the production team do a tour. Our tour, literally, you walk right through. You can go through the bottling line. You can see the fermenter. You can watch them do a mash. You can watch them pump over into the column still. You can literally put your hand into the mash tank at our distillery and taste the grain. We got an open air fermenter. So there's, to me, nothing cooler than like, going and seeing whether it's Old Dominick or another brand, how they actually make the spirits. Because everybody, it's easy to talk to a sales or marketing guy, but like when you get to meet like Dion or Grace or some of these people who are on our team on a tour, it's pretty sweet. Like those people are rock stars back there. So.
Absolutely. And they are literally the backbone of the company. And and sure. and they have some experiences back there, because like a lot of the things that you do with the still setup and stuff, you got to kind of learn on the fly. And like all of a sudden you got pressure issues or whatever, or your mash didn't do what it needed to do and you don't have as much alcohol in there. Like they have to kind of learn as they go, which is super cool. Even in these days where everything is automated, right? Everything has automation ran to it and all of these things. And I know everybody's trying to be state of the art to where it streamlines the process, but it's still that physical hand on something that makes whiskey what it is to me. Right. And other people might not say that, but to me, it's that physical hand turning levers and, doing all the things.
You can automate a lot of this, but at the end of the day, we still have people tasting it as it comes off the still, making sure that there's so many quality control checks that you have to do. Otherwise, you might as well just kind of be, you might as well just still, just whatever, finished goods and put it in a tote. Right. And then things break. And people have to go and figure out how to fix it versus, if you're a big giant production facility like a, Wild Turkey or whatever, you've got a maintenance shop of 20 people in there that know what to do. At Old Dominick, we just call Dane or we call one of our guys like, you know how to fix this shit? They're like, no, but we'll have to figure it out, so that's the fun part about it, right? You kind of, it's a labor of love for those people. So
absolutely, because inevitably the boiler will break, and guess what?
You can't do anything
getting a boiler maintenance. I guess I need to quit what I'm doing and come down over by y'all and just be boiler maintenance. I don't know anything about it, but it's just like water heater, so I'm sure it's the same. I need to come over there.
It's a little more technical than that. Right, I can tell you, we've been through about 6 different companies to try to fix our boiler, and now we're figuring out. Let's just figure out how to do it ourselves.
Absolutely. No, I mean, and then that turns into a whole nother topic about, the trades, bringing up a bunch of dummies and stuff like that. But anyway, that's a different podcast for a different day.
I need to get you on with Tim Landers, our production manager, and y'all would be able to talk. We're going on an hour and 15. Y'all would be 3 hours deep. So. Yeah. I'm sure because like I can just tell you from the crap that I had to deal with literally today, where I'm just like, oh my God, like literally these
people, where do these people come from? Like, what are we doing? And I work by myself. I am self-employed. I'm the boss, the jury, the executioner, all the things. And so like, I just look at other people's crews and I'm like, what in the world are we doing here? Like, this is not how life should be. But hey, that's what we bought into, I guess. I guess that's what we got. All right, Clark, this has been an excellent episode. I appreciate everything that you have done and all the bringing over some whiskey, and we had a great time. They are all absolutely phenomenal guys. So go out and pick you up some Old Dominick. Is it Old Dominick whiskey or on Old Dominick Distillery.com?
OldDominick.com.
OldDominick.com. See, I was way off on both of those. So go pick you up a bottle. I have it linked down in the description below. You know this, guys. And y'all make sure that you're following everything that I'm doing, and stay on, Clark. I want to talk to you real fast, but y'all be good to each other. It's it's crazy stuff going on right now. So just be good to each other.
The sky's not falling, boys and girls.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely. And we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. All right, y'all be good, and until next time, keep your spirits up. Peace.